It is Friday, March 20th, 2020. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was yet another No Jiu-Jitsu Get Your Ass Kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Friday. Very terrible. Although the streaming class did have a guest instructor, and thank you, sir. I forgot your name already. But yeah, I don't know if I said this on my last show, but I got to tell you, watching the class stream like that, and only an instructor and their assistant being there, it's a lot like either A, watching a class that somebody did and posted on YouTube, or B, it's kind of like if you were to get divorced, your wife was to get remarried, and then you were to join them during their Christmas party via a live stream. You know, you get to watch it and all that, but you know, it doesn't really have anything to do with you, and you can maybe interact with them with text and stuff like that, but it doesn't include any of the warmth of actual personal proximity. And yeah, so I think that personally, all this sequestering, this personal sequestering bullshit, I think it's psychological. Because you see, humans are very social beings. Very social beings. They crave contact. They crave visual contact. They crave physical contact. And this is just truth. I mean, we're no different than any other hominid like that. Or mammal, for that matter. Many mammals have this same affinity for touch and proximity to one another and closeness. And so the idea of social isolation, I think, is to force people to where they're in a position where they experience more anxiety instead of less. You know, I like being around people that have already given up on the idea of the work week and the work schedule and structure that most of us currently have to endure as quote-unquote work, because being outside that system, you start to understand exactly what it is that you objected to, you know, and it's difficult to see from within it, because I mean, you're so caught up in the system that you're working within and working with the vocabulary and the contexts, the intellectual contexts that you operate within during your workday, that you forget there are other options, and you forget that there are realities that aren't as constrained, and that you don't experience the same soul suck, life suck that you do every day at work. But you know, I think this is something that people are going to get reoriented with in the next week or so. You know, a lot of people are like, you know, getting all concerned that people are going to freak out and go all riot and shit. I don't think that's going to happen. In all honesty, I think that most people have been experiencing this for long enough that they're having to reassess exactly what's valuable. And they're finding that their personal relationships, you know, with their family and their friends is more important to them than pretty much anything else. And when they don't have to consider the fiscal cost of certain things, the value of those relationships goes up vastly. You know, it's you can kind of shuffle them off when it doesn't mean anything in the context where you have to be to work by 8 o'clock and you have to bust your ass and you have to have your boss over your fucking shoulder for 8 hours a day. You know, it doesn't have any importance there. It doesn't have any significance there. But absent that, you know, once you aren't going to be experiencing that, but you're going to have enough money to put a little bit of food in your mouth and maybe a little bit of rent, or at least your payment for your house payment or your mortgage or whatever will be relieved that month. You know, it recontextualizes the importance of those relationships. You know, and I think that in the not so distant future, within probably a week or two, we're going to start seeing a reversal of this trend. I'm already seeing a reversal of trends in with regard to this whole situation. I guess China's starting to get back up on their feet, and a great number of the people that had been infected are currently not infected anymore, so that gives me hope. It shows me that the survivability rate for this thing is way better than the fucking media is blowing it out to be, and that this is yet another chance that they've had to serve as a public service in helping join communities together, and they pissed it away on sensationalism and fear-mongering during this entire time. So, I think that we'll continue to see that slip and slide in favorability that they've experienced, and it's been deserved. They've lost it because they gave it away. They sold it for higher ratings, and now that doesn't even buy them higher ratings, well, they're going to go the way of the dodo. And I think currently they're experiencing a little bit of a bump in viewership, but it's only because you're stuck at home. And, they can afford the time right now, or at least they think they can afford the time right now sitting there watching the news. But pretty soon they're going to be dedicating that time to watching YouTube, figuring out how to make a fucking greenhouse, because it's kind of obvious that there's going to continue to be a little bit of supply lag with regard to getting food and whatnot out to the store that they live near. And they're going to start growing their own crops, because then they at least have a currency they can exchange for things like eggs and crops that some of their neighbors are growing. As I said, I think that one of the biggest problems with this country is not that there's any kind of real disparity. It's because we piss away our time. We're not given a real rundown of how precious that time really is to us. I think if it were held in a little bit higher regard, that we didn't regard our time according to a caste type schedule. If you're a CEO, your money's worth your time's worth all kinds of money, right? But what about your next door neighbor's kid? He hasn't spent any time in the workplace. His time is it's free, it's cheap. I think there's something fundamentally wrong with that. And again, it's one of those things that I think is going to change in the not so distant future. I think that the visions of dystopianism or dystopian futures that we've been fed in multiple different types of media, I think they're short of the reality in a great many ways. And I think we here in cryptocurrencies have had probably the best perspective possible with regard to learning those lessons. And it is really a shame, because a lot of the people that have been in this space the longest, they've been quite sheltered with regard to how they interact with this space. I would argue that the majority of them don't even use cryptocurrencies as money, both to either, pay for things in their own lives plus the lives of others. And so, it allows them to continue certain fallacies in their own minds and the way they contextualize what they have to say about cryptocurrencies. One of those examples, I've been talking about this for a long time, but soon, and in the not so distant future, as a matter of fact, you will probably see it, I would say, within the next month or two. We are going to see the price for Bitcoin transactions go up significantly. And not just because of the halving, because it's just going to go up. The block space is going to become much more expensive, because the transactions that people are doing on them are going to be supporting thousands of transactions and not just one or two. And that's a lot. It's a lot different story when it comes to setup, and also the profit motive behind what you're doing changes. But anyway, I've said many a time on this show that I anticipate soon enough the vast majority of people that are running nodes on the Lightning Network and other second layer bullshit, they're going to find that getting their establishing and terminating transactions is going to become a lot more expensive and a lot sooner than they'd anticipated. And when it does, the vast majority of them are going to get dusted because the transaction fees will exceed their node balance in Bitcoin. Now, I've also said that the pricing regime is progressive. And this is also true, and we will see this ramp up even harder in the not-so-distant future. But I don't know, I hate continually repeating it, but I feel like I have to, because like I might only catch you for the 30 seconds or so that you're tuned in here, or maybe the few minutes that you catch on the clip of YouTube that you listen to. But I'm saying this all the time, that I've been warning people for years, literally years, about this. And, you know, it's because I personally experienced it when the vast majority of people were shifting away from Bitcoin and onto altcoins. There was a reason for it. It was because Bitcoin's transaction fees had gotten into the tens and hundreds of dollars. And this effect is going to happen again. You know, I know there's all this talk about fee market, blah, 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 blah. Bunch of fucking bullshit. All of that shit requires licensure, and at the moment, they're talking about, you know, they're gonna relieve regulatory pressure, and they're not gonna prosecute crimes and all this other shit. But they're keeping track of all that shit, and this is something I think that a lot of y'all that are participating in this space are simply disregarding. Is that they do keep track of this shit, and if you start getting lax on any of your security protocols, when it comes down to figuring out who the dissidents are and who funded what and all that other shit, all of your traffic is going to become subject to examination. And especially now that it's on a public blockchain. You know? And this has been the twin-sided blade that all of our legislative bodies have had to put up with, because they themselves have invested in many ways, shapes, and forms in this space, and that's required them to personally expose themselves. And while they're not worried about it in the sense that some of them might actually die before anybody is brought to account for what they've done, it doesn't mean the sins of the father are going to go away with them. Then the son may in fact be experiencing them. I think we're going to learn a lot about power, and a lot about how it doesn't matter how powerful you are. Math is still math. And one is still one. And if you don't have one, you're fucked. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down with some music. And, yeah, I'm going to throw down with some body count. You know I am. But where to go? Let's see here. Surviving the Game. First Dance. Here on Coin Metal. And that was Skindred with Nobody. And you know why that is, right? Because nobody will escape this shit. I fucking laugh at these rich people that think that they're going to socially isolate themselves from us. At one point or another, they are going to need us. And when that time comes, they will be exposed to us. That's all there is to it. Yeah, you know, I think it's funny because, you know, some people think there's some sort of containment from a major kind of like social or economic kerfuffle. You know, that somehow your position in life or your professional position or whatever, it's going to protect you. You know what, dude? If you're not a farmer and you're not a doctor or you can't catch a fish or you can't hunt, you can't build anything, you're going to be useless to about 99% of the people around you. Something to consider. Anyway, I got a whole bunch of stuff here, and trying to figure out where it was. Let's see here. Ooh. No? Wrong one? Alright. Let's go with this one. I got a series of these. And this is just to... I don't know if it'll get us to all the points that I think it will, but we'll walk forward confidently and see how it works out, okay? And so this one's on BitcoinMagazine.com. The Bitcoin mixing case at the center of the fight for transaction privacy. And this is by Colin Harper. It was authored March 17th, 2020. So yes, penis. A court case is underway in the United States that could become a watermark decision for Bitcoin transaction privacy and compliance law. Larry Harmon of Ohio, who incidentally owns the Coin Ninja media site, was recently charged and arrested for money laundering some 350,000 Bitcoin, roughly $300 million at the time of the indictment, through his custodial mixing service, Helix. Harmon's service catered to dark web market participants, particularly sellers, and he associated his service with Grams, his dark web search engine. Authorities may have sniffed Harmon out following the forced closure of Alphabay in July 2017. At the time, Alphabay was one of the most popular black markets on the web and the source of Harmon's business. Quote, "The sole purpose of Harmon's operation was to conceal criminal transactions from law enforcement on the darknet, and because of our growing expertise in this area, he could not make good on that promise." Don Fort, the chief of the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit, said in a press release, quote, "Working in tandem with other sites, he sought to be the, quote, go-to money launderer on the darknet, but our investigators once again played the role of criminal disruptors, unraveling the interlinked web from one tentacle to another." Makes it your own risk. Harmon's legal defense is staking the claim that this case ultimately is an affront to online privacy. At its core, this case is about Bitcoin's fungibility, or whether or not each coin is indistinguishable from another. That's never been the claim of Bitcoin. It's that one Bitcoin is worth one Bitcoin. See, what they're trying to do right now is establish a precedent whereby they could try and interdict in Bitcoin transactions. Continuing on. Oh, and by the way, they can't, so fuck them. Let's see here. Whether or not each coin is indistinguishable from another, Bitcoin's lack of fungibility from a technical perspective is a bedrock of the ongoing privacy debate surrounding the cryptocurrency. Actually, that's bullshit. The only debate is amongst regulators, and it's because they want to be able to stop transactions that they don't like. Well, fuck them. For Harmon's case, the issue of legal fungibility is coming to the fore. Quote, "The district judge, after a pretty substantial fight, overruled the magistrate judge and granted Larry release on bond conditions. So, it's a glimmer of hope for the Harmon family. But the government has seized all their properties and assets, so they still need all the financial support the Bitcoin community can muster. If the government's theory of the case is successful, it is the beginning of the end of cryptocurrency fungibility. Actually, it's not. They haven't gotten any better at being able to interdict in transactions. Unless, of course, you're stupid enough to use your shit off-chain, then they will. The government has made it clear that they will conflate privacy with illegality. Harmon's attorney, Charles Flood, told us, "Yeah, the SEC shows us that all the time. It's an illegal security because it's not registered with us." Fucking bullshit. The problem is, there's not much conflating that needs to be done in Harmon's case. His mixer, which required its users to relinquish their private keys so funds could be shuffled, was used with the explicit purposes of obfuscating illicit funds. Thus, honest, privacy-savvy Bitcoin users should have nothing to worry about legally so long as they have nothing to hide. Jesse Spiro, head of policy at Chainalysis, told Bitcoin Magazine. That's utter bullshit. If that were true, then we would not have such things as redacted documents when we do a FOIA request. If the government has absolutely nothing to hide, then it shouldn't be fucking redacted. Now, should it? But it is, because the government is conducting things that are illegal. And if we're brought to the fore, they could be brought to account for. But you're going to be brought to account. Damn Skippy. Fucking bullshit. But to Flood's point, if honest Bitcoiner winds up with coins that were involved in mixing illicit funds, those Bitcoin could be tainted. Fungibility then could be very much at legal risk with this case, especially considering the compliance trend is prioritized marking such dirty coins. Yeah, you know what? If you're one of the people out there that's distinguishing between coins, fuck you. You're completely against the entire ethos of Bitcoin, and you should die. Meaning your business. Continuing on, quote, honest, privacy-focused users should have a problem because this shows law enforcement is focused on individuals who are using mixers to cover up criminal activity. Actually, they're just doing it to fucking do it because it's their right. Fuck you. Their reason for doing so is none of your fucking business. It's not your money, it's not your property, and you have absolutely no right over it. So fuck you, again. The risk is that with mixers, honest people may unknowingly mix their funds with illicit funds, which may raise flags across the ecosystem, considering the increase in compliance controls. Most of our customers consider mixers to be at high risk. As a result, if they see their clients using them, they will trigger increased scrutiny and compliance measures. And you know what? If the people that I'm doing business is one of your clients and they decide to increase their scrutiny on me, I will stop using their service. Compliance ramped up. Consequently, these compliance controls and compliance measures take root in Chainalysis' own software and other blockchain analytics companies like it. These companies sell transaction querying software to exchanges, regulators, and other officials with the ostensible aim of keeping tabs on illegal activity. Actually, that's bullshit. If they were keeping tabs on illegal activity, it should be absolutely impossible to use your fucking credit card from your bank to purchase drugs. But unfortunately, they have absolutely no ability to enforce themselves, and so if somebody has a swiper and they look all legit, according to all the little cues that they have to give banks and whatnot to indicate they're a legitimate business to transact the money, their transactions will go through unquestioned. And so you're kind of rewarded for using US dollars in an illicit fashion because your transactions, because they're happening in US dollars, well gosh, they gotta be legitimate because that's all regulated. And everybody complies with the regulations, don't they? Give me a fucking break. That is precisely the worry at Samurai. Oh, wait, let's see. But Spiro's comment betrays the consequence of this surveillance. Honest users can get caught in the crossfire. That is precisely the worry at Samurai Wallet, according to their representative who sees this case as an affront to online privacy and, depending on the outcome, an excuse to ramp up efforts. Quote, regardless of the outcomes of the investigation, the pro-compliance trends within the industry are very concerning, they told Bitcoin Magazine. The compliance companies have recently solidified their place and authority in this space and appear to be driving pro-KYC compliance policies and narratives, although they're not really being all that effective. We expect this trend to continue, but encourage users to push back by never opting into custodial or KYC services. Now that's fucking hilarious, considering that they are probably a custodial service, and because they're on your phone, that is attached to your Gmail account, which is attached to your bank account, and is also attached to your driver's license, and your social security number, and your physical address, and your image, probably of you holding your driver's license. Oh yeah. You want to tell me there's some fucking privacy in there somewhere? Fuck you. Another wallet that provides CoinJoin services, Wasabi, declined to provide comment on the case because they're run by bankers, and they've been trying to drive people along this route for a very, very long time. The anonymous Samurai representative believes this case won't impact the wallet's functions, which include non-custodial coin joining service called Whirlpool. Helix has a custodial service. Harman had to procure private keys from users in order to mix their funds, so his hustle had been treated under the law as a money transmitter. Samurai, on the other hand, quote, never takes possession of the coins and is not subject to the money transmitter issues that are being applied to Helix, the representative said. You know what, Mr. Representative? You can say that while you're Mr. fucking Anonymous, but the fact of the matter is if you tried to argue that shit in court, they would be putting your anonymous ass in fucking prison. Continuing on. Where Helix took possession of the coins on behalf of users, Whirlpool is merely a protocol that allows for the exchange of information between users and with the end user always retaining possession of their coins, they continued. They also said that the team has not seen a trend of third parties targeting mixed transactions, nor have they received reports of flagged Whirlpool deposits into centralized exchanges. Not yet. To break this down further, with Helix, the funds are simply, quote, mixed, and each user receives someone else's coins in the process. With CoinJoins, each user batches his or her own Bitcoin into a transaction with many other participants, and at the end receives the same Bitcoin back after it has been obfuscated using this service. Still, technicalities aside, Spiro is not convinced that this argument would hold up in a court of law. I'm not either. Quote, the U.S. Treasury's Criminal Task Force, the FinCEN, wouldn't discriminate between custodial services like Helix and non-custodial services like Samurai or Wasabi. If your software has run-ins with illegal activity, you could be subject to enforcement, Spiro put it. Quote, FinCEN doesn't make a distinction between something like Helix or something like Wasabi or CoinJoin, and this could be seen as a warning shot to all mixers and tumblers. It means that number one, they need to register with FinCEN, and number two, if they can't keep bad actors from exploiting their services, they will be subject to law enforcement action, he told Bitcoin Magazine. This may be frustrating to Bitcoiners who understand that the CoinJoin services Samurai and Wasabi provide are, in the words of Samurai's representative, quote, a fundamentally different proposition than what Helix was offering. Same song, different dance. Still, it remains to be seen whether or not this argument would hold up in court. With the creeping hands of compliance slowly closing over the cryptocurrency industry, though, transaction privacy is becoming increasingly compromised at the hands of authority and legacy financial regulations. Chainalysis' software is becoming more sophisticated as well. As Spiro put it, it's very possible, if, quote, fairly labor-intensive, to de-anonymize coins that have been cleaned through a wallet like Wasabi or Samurai. With enforcement ramping up and transaction analysis tools finding their way into the hands of exchanges and regulators, the war on Bitcoin transaction privacy is likely just beginning. It will be fought in the courts, and we won't know the ramifications for sure until more legal action takes place. In other words, until they do a 3 a.m. breach on your house. After all, this is the first case in which a custodial/centralized mixer has been implicated in illegal activity as a money services business. FinCEN made it clear this would be the case as of May 2019. The next question is, will the good guys like Samurai and Wasabi be in hot water as regulators pay more acute attention. Spiro says it's hard to say, but as the question looms, he believes more regulation will come to address it down the road. Quote, "We anticipate further regulation will be introduced that will limit the viability and accessibility of those services to the ecosystem, regardless of whether they are custodial, centralized services or not. It's hard to speculate what would happen if the operators of decentralized services were brought to court." I think what's going to end up happening is that they're not going to go after individual node users or anything like that. They're going to go after people who are authoring software. And that's really a shame, because what's going to end up happening is those people are going to be replaced by fully anonymous people who will be following Satoshi Nakamoto's example, and that is still entirely possible in this day and age. The people that know how will, and will teach others how. And then they're going to stab you all in the eye with a fucking pencil. Anyway, moving along. The whole thing about that, trying to limit people's ability to obfuscate their transactions in the pathway of them, that tells me how very, very desperate they are for your money. You have to understand that they don't express this kind of effort, even if it's just to give you the impression that such effort is being placed on it. When they do, it shows you how much they fear this type of thing. That you will be able to avoid all of the taxation that they apply to your everyday commerce, and that they will be able to continue to fund the wars that they conduct against you with it. See, personally, I think that the way that this is going to end up going down, if it does end up in any significant disruption of society as we know it, that society as we know it will fork. And all of the people that they trained to point guns at us, at the point where their checks are no longer worth anything, and they're no longer able to steal enough from us to make it worth it, at that point, they will be turning the guns on the people giving them orders. Because everybody wants to get paid. And when you get paid in something that does not allow you to buy anything of worth, what worth is it to you? Nothing. And this is where I think society as a whole is going to end up forking. Is because they're going to try to apply this shit. And invariably, they're going to end up busting their own kids. Because their own kids are involved in this shit. There is no escape. You think that you can play along and they're going to treat you better. There never has been a time when it works out that way. Ever. Sure, you might be among the last in line, but it's not usually that case. If they get a significant enough hold right up front, the first thing they do is kill the people that help get them there. Why? Because they know how it got there, which means they know how to undo it. Keep it in mind, kids, it's never worked out that way. So stay on the side of your neighbor, or your neighbors, or humanity, or even people that are among your community in cryptocurrencies. These are people that have done something to earn your loyalty in this life. They've given you favors. They've given you money, shelter, food, comfort. The government entities that wish to exceed these regulations on your everyday life, they have no such concern for you. They will have no such concern for you. And you're just as good as on the table as food as your neighbor is. So, our next article here, it's on Bitcoinist.com. Coronavirus pandemic elevates the case for universal basic income. It's needed to scale, and urgently. This is on Bitcoinist. It was authored March 19th, 2020. And let me see who wrote it. This might be an aggregated article. And if so, we'll go directly to the source. Okay. Well, we'll go with it. Let's see. No one could have predicted the speed and scale of the coronavirus pandemic. I could have. I did. As is the way that such rare black swan events, what is taking flight, however, as a result of catastrophic COVID-19, is the argument for universal basic income. Now, there's never been a positive argument for that because invariably it ends up in inflation. If you want to know the true development of things, you have no further to look at than Venezuela, and we're actually probably going to look at that soon. Anyway, continuing on. Now, thought leaders and politicians are spanning the political spectrum, are uniting to elevate basic income, a model for providing every person with an unconditional sum of money, regardless of employment status, income, or resources, as an essential requirement at this time of extreme financial challenge that they brought about themselves. Direct cash transfers and relief packages are a part of the political conversation as never before, and crucially, were not considered during the global economic crash of 2008, with the majority of power brokers recognizing the role that regular minimum income plays in bolstering our entire larger financial system. At Good Dollar, we are working towards delivering a global UBI solution by embracing blockchain technology and token design, in other words, butt tokens, not proof of work that you're mining, to reduce global wealth inequality. And as the horrifying situation across the globe, with months of uncertainty stretching ahead, makes clear, there's a desperate need for UBI. The delicacy of the fabric of society has been painfully laid bare. Actually, no. Those of us who are involved in cryptocurrencies, we knew this shit was coming, or at least the people that were in early. I mean, the people that are in since like 2017, the vast majority of you guys have just been profit takers. Not really concerned with the underlying dynamic of what's going on here. You don't concern yourself with who the network is. You don't concern yourself with being part of the network. You don't concern yourself with developing any kind of software or wallet services for the native coin. No. You try and think of ways to clip little transaction fees off all of the users. Well, that's exactly the same paradigm that we're trying to escape. Because invariably, by you conducting those services, you will either, by normal function or by abnormal function of your software solutions, be altering the state of the transaction for somebody, in which case you've now become the custodian. This is why Satoshi Nakamoto went by a pseudonym, so he could not be directly attributed blame or credit for any of this shit, other than the fact that he authored it and he presented it to the world. What we've done with it since, that is on us. Continuing on. Let's see, horrifying situation across the globe. Quote, epidemic diseases are not random events that afflict societies capriciously and without warning, writes Frank Snowden, a professor emeritus of history and the history of medicine at Yale, in his new book, Epidemics and Society. From the Black Death to present, on contrary, every society produces its own specific vulnerabilities. To study them is to understand that society's structure in standard of living and its political priorities. Indeed, it's those at the bottom, small business owners, gig workers, and with rent to pay, those who can't feed their families without work pay, who suffer most when tragedy strikes. The effective shutdown of large parts of the hospitality and travel industries as governments seek to suppress the COVID outbreak is likely just a taster of the disruption to come. Wealth inequality exacerbated in crisis, only because the regulatory regime stays in place. Get the fuck out of the way. Continuing on. UBI is designed to enable a baseline standard of living that ensures a certain level of financial security and Given that there is a worry COVID will bankrupt more people than it kills, there is no surprise that the clamor for adoption is getting louder by the day. Not really. Over the weekend, New York-based Republican AOC posted on Twitter, quote, "We need emergency UBI now." As the enormous effects of coronavirus become more definite, the former barmaid wrote, quote, "The need for social distancing from restaurants only underscores the need for relief for tipped workers, freelancers, shift workers, etc. Tax credits and unemployment insurance does not help many of these workers. That's a huge segment of our economy." 2 days after AOC's comments, which were well received within her party and across the divide with the Democrats, the New York Times published a chilling article explaining how, in times of crisis, wealth inequality is exacerbated. Yes, of course, you gotta fucking pump up that fear. Quote, "As the coronavirus spreads across the globe, it appears to be setting off a devastating feedback loop with another of the gravest forces of our time, economic inequality, that's maintained by my position in the market and my abuse of it." But we're not going to quote that. "In societies where the virus hits, it is deepening the consequences of inequality, pushing many of the burdens onto the losers of today's polarized economies and labor markets, i.e. the victims of my economic and legal policies and regulatory frameworks." Yeah, you're all the fucking losers out there, according to this guy. Quote, "Research suggests that those in lower economic strata are likelier to catch the disease. They are likelier to die from it. And even for those who remain healthy, they are likelier to suffer the loss of income or health care as a result of quarantines and other measures, potentially on a sweeping scale." Now think about that. He's telling you that you will continue to suffer if you follow through with the policies that they're telling you. So when they're telling you to quarantine yourself, they're telling you to harm yourself, to inhibit your ability to create income, to inhibit your health. Stay inside, isolate yourself, stay lonely, be alone. The article continued, quote, "At the same time, inequality itself may be acting as a multiplier on the coronavirus's spread and deadliness. Research on influenzas found that in an epidemic, poverty and inequality can exacerbate rates of transmission and mortality for everyone." This chimes with the American public health expert Nicole Errett, who co-directs the Center on Extreme Event Resilience at the University of Washington. Quote, "These things are so interconnected," she said. "Pre-existing social vulnerabilities only get worse following a disaster, and this is such a perfect example of that. Companies large and small in America, UK, and all over the world have requested government bailouts, which they should not get. But it's those at the bottom who are more likely to feel the pinch. What is the point of funding an international airline, for example, when its employees are starving?" Yeah, because you won't fucking get back to work and start giving people airplane rides. Oh yeah, that they can't afford because they aren't at work either. See, this whole thing is a fucking self-creating snowball. And it's your participation in it that exacerbates it, that makes it worse. So quit fucking participating in it. Start connecting with your friends. Start creating communities that you can service, that you provide service to, and that give you service. There have been a lot of your relationships that you have entertained far too long that have been entirely one way, where other people have been the recipient of your goodness without nothing coming back. And it is these times when you're going to be reevaluating that situation and seeing if you want to retain those dependency structures. Maybe it's worth it to you, maybe it's not, but you will figure it out. Continuing on. UBI uniting the political divide? Yeah, bullshit. Here's one thing right here. Nobody, and you can quote me or you can fucking quote whoever you want on this one. Nobody has ever gotten rich on UBI. Ever. The only way you quote-unquote get rich on UBI is that you buy something, you make something that's not available in the economy with it, and then you sell that at a premium in something else, or for something else. And that's the only way you get rich in UBI. You know, you sell things for gold, or you sell things for silver, things that other people might want, might hold valuable. You know, I've thought about it a lot, and this is one of the reasons why in Equilibrium, the movie Equilibrium, that they go about trying to destroy things that mean things to people, like paintings and artwork, is because those are currency. And if you have currency that you can exchange to other people, that you can exchange with other people, that they value, you have something that can't be provided by the state. And suddenly you're more powerful than the state because you have it and the state doesn't. Do you understand? It's all about control, and it's all about providing you with value, or at least something to substitute for it. And maybe that's you get one step up from the guy that gets shot in line. Continuing on. And Larry Elliott, economics editor at The Guardian, talked up UBI but was more balanced. Quote, "A UBI provides each citizen with a guaranteed income regardless of how well off they are and whether or not they are in work." He wrote, quote, "The supporters of a UBI say it's an idea that's time has come, but it has little realistic chance of being implemented during the current crisis, even if it had ministerial support due to the fundamental changes that would be needed to tax the benefits system." To the tax and benefits system. Yeah, in other words, because your tax system doesn't work on anything other than US dollars or other fiat currencies, they're not capable of interfacing with you, which is an advantage at this time. It means we could fork really quick and really easy. Momentum for UBI is building, though, as pandemic panic mounts worldwide and more people globally are told to stay home, become unhealthy. On Monday, Senator Mitt Romney of Utah, a conservative American politician, took a progressive position proposing UBI. Quote, "Every American adult should immediately receive a one-time check for $1,000 to help ensure families and workers can meet their short-term obligations and increase spending in the economy," he wrote Twitter. No. The suggestion mirrors a driving element of Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang's campaign, which ended in January. Yeah, that ought to tell you how popular fucking UBI is. If it was all that more popular, he'd be the primary fucking candidate because he was the one out front offering it. Let's see. Let's go a little bit further here. Every day is enormous at this point. When Congress wakes up before it's too late. This is Yang saying that. And later on Monday, he was more forceful. Quote, "What exactly is the political downside of putting money into people's hands? Get your shit together, Congress, and do the right thing." I'll tell you what it is, Mr. Yang, is that everybody will rush to the market with those dollars, and they will be trying to buy TP. Only they're going to have a lot more dollars than is available in TP. And so they're going to pay the price that the market is willing to bear. And this is going to destroy the fucking value of the US dollar, because toilet paper will literally be worth more per sheet than US dollars. And that rate will only go faster, will only accelerate if you're handing out UBI for free for any duration of time. I mean, you might get away with it for 1 month, maybe even 2, before people start ratcheting up their prices, because throughout the rest of the market, the fucking Fed is stuffing trillions of dollars into people's fucking hands. Not $1,000, not a couple $1,000. No. Trillions of fucking dollars into people's hands, only not yours. This same fucking lesson has been played out 1 billion fucking times on this planet. I do not know how they are able, through the media, to convince you that this time it will be any different. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music, because I want to. And this is kind of glitching on me. I gotta wonder what else is going on here. Let's see here. And as far as where we're going to go for music, I played a lot of good stuff last time. Here we go. This is how I feel about the media right now. Rollins Band, Liar, here on Coin Metal. And that was Sepultura with Roots, Bloody Roots. And so, our next little bit here, wanted to get into. We got through that one. We got through UBI, which, no. Here we go. And we're going to see how this one goes. You know, there's been a lot of call that gotta migrate to Bitcoin. You know, if you're whoa, hold on a second. I just noticed something that all the prices except for Bitcoin have gone down. Interesting. But anyway, you know, unless you're using Bitcoin on chain, you face the risk that your third party is going to say no. And I can't remember if it was Blue Wallet, Wasabi, or one of those. They're offering their wallet services, but if you read down into their terms of service, they give you a list of transaction types or items rather that they prohibit that you buy using their services. Now, this is without anybody really telling them to do that kind of condition. But they're doing it anyway. So what does that tell you about their future development? It tells me that maintaining your privacy and your sanctity over your affairs is of no concern to them. So it might instruct you as to whether or not you want to continue using their service or whether you want to investigate into using their services at all. You know? What are you trying to derive from using cryptocurrencies? Are you wanting a little bit of privacy for yourself? Well, if so, using Bitcoin off-chain is probably not a good idea. Anyway, this next one I got here is on Cointelegraph, and I can't remember if Telegraph is the aggregator that we don't like all that much. There's a couple of them out there that all they do is aggregate other people's fucking work. Anyway, Cointelegraph, this is by Andrew Fenton, so yes, penis. It was authored March 19th, 2020. Congress proposal to give everyone $2,000 a month strengthens the case for Bitcoin. Democrat Congresswoman Maxine Waters has proposed giving $2,000 a month to every adult and $1,000 a month to every child in America to help them through the COVID-19 financial crisis. Waters, the chair of the U.S. House Financial Services Committee, made a series of other extraordinary legislative proposals to help the economy in a memorandum dated March 18th. And, you know, we might actually read that. The proposals also include a suspension of all consumer and small business credit payments, including mortgages, car payments, student loans, small business loans, and personal loans. It's a sign of just how desperate the financial situation is that economic proposals that are more far-reaching than anything since the Great Depression are even on the table. They go much further than presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders' recent call for a one-off of $2,000 emergency payments. Announcing the proposed measures, Waters said that media reports indicated Trump administration would give $850 billion in aid to impacted industries. Quote, "If true, it is apparent that this administration is missing the point. Families must come first. That's why I'm proposing a bold fiscal stimulus package and public policy response that will benefit hardworking and vulnerable Americans who may face financial hardship or even eviction or foreclosure as a result of the coronavirus crisis. Proposal would cause massive inflation. Founder of quantum economics, Matty Greenspan, said he was taken aback by the $2,000 a month proposal. Quote, basically, it would cause massive inflation because you get more money competing for the same amount of goods, he told Cointelegraph. Greenspan said it appeared to be a universal basic income in disguise and that he didn't believe President Donald Trump would ever sign it into law. However, that could change if the Democrats win the November election. If so, quote, in the long term, Bitcoin could certainly benefit. I don't know about the rest of the crypto market. Basically, anything that would hold its value in the face of a depreciating currency, especially if the reason is poor judgment by the government and banks, that certainly strengthens the case for Bitcoin. The free money proposal appears to have doubled since yesterday, when Waters told SiriusXM's The Joe Madison Show that every adult should be given $1,000 a month. Consumer and small business debt holiday. Waters is also proposing that negative consumer credit reporting, debt collection, and repossessions should be suspended for the duration, and that after the crisis is passed, borrowers would be provided with, quote, affordable opportunities to repay arrears over time without late fees or back interest. Evictions and foreclosures would be banned, and rental and utility payments suspended for assisted renters. Non-assisted renters would be given payment assistance. Greenspan said that some of the measures could be appropriate if they were temporary and strictly time-limited, but the danger is that once these tools are used for the first time, they're very difficult to not use again. Quote, we saw that with quantitative easing, he said. It's Pandora's box, and you can't put Pandora back into the box. Other legislative proposals: the suspension of commercial commercial rental payments for businesses and nonprofits, $50 billion in grants to small businesses, $100,000 payroll tax rebate, and a 200% rebate in hotspots. New rules to require public companies to disclose supply chain risks and ramifications. A ban on the creation of new financial rules not directly related to the crisis. Bans on stock buybacks and dividends. Doubling the U.S. commitment to the International Monetary Fund's emergency backstop facility. I think I've read this before. $500 billion to help the homeless who are at greater risk of catching the disease, and forgiving $10,000 of student loan debt after the crisis is passed. Let me see if there's let's see here. Yeah, I'm not seeing an option for comments on here. So yeah, I don't know that that this kind of event is really going to increase the demand for Bitcoin as a quote-unquote store of value. As a medium of exchange, absolutely. See, you need a medium of exchange to retain its relative value, if not actually increase, in your economy. This is why I thought the whole idea of stable coins and introducing those to this market is fucking silly. You know, the fact of the matter is that the only thing that really changes the price of Bitcoin down is the amount of speculation in risk that people are willing to endure in it. And if it becomes too obvious that transacting in Bitcoin is a bum for people that are wanting to sell things that aren't necessarily legal in the jurisdiction that they're in, They are going to use other cryptocurrencies. They are not restricted to solely Bitcoin, nor will they use only Bitcoin. This is one of the reasons why I have always praised altcoins. And I will make one concession, or one omission, or admission there, rather. There was a brief period of time where I thought altcoins were a bad idea, because I thought that they would draw the focus of development off of Bitcoin and onto other projects and make them weaker and easier to take down individually. And to some extent this is correct. That because some eyes have been taken off of Bitcoin and concentrated on other projects, that Bitcoin has suffered due to the lack of influence. But when those same people were being ignored in lieu of people that had banker and VC money, well, what do you expect them to do? Do you expect them to stay under the umbrella of Bitcoin and continue to be treated like their contribution doesn't mean anything? Or are they going to fork the project and go to where their contribution actually means something? We've seen how the market's going to respond. We've already seen it, plain as day. 2012 happened, shit started getting a little too fractious, and all of a sudden we started developing altcoins. And that's what's going to happen, because this is an open source realm. All of the software that drives everything here, almost all of it, is open source. And where it isn't, there are analogs that can do the same exact thing that are. And pretty soon, people are going to be looking at the function and the efficiency of coins as being their primary selling point. And also, of course, their privacy or ability to retain their privacy while using them. So yeah, I don't think that this necessarily strengthens the case for Bitcoin. Most certainly strengthens the case for cryptocurrencies in general, because they aren't dependent on the will of a bank. At least most of them aren't. Some of them are, though. Anyway, I got this memorandum here. It's only 6 pages. I think we can get to all of it, but I want to make sure that we're not cutting off other stuff that I really wanted to cover. Well, we are coming up to an interesting period, and we are having to make a bunch of choices, with regard to which mediums we want to stick with and bother to support. And that opens up some opportunities. And not just for cryptocurrencies, but also for banks. IMF is stepping in here, and it's on Bitcoinist.com. Central bank digital currency, incredibly rich area, says IMF. Even though they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And this is by Trevor Smith. It was authored March 20th, 2020 at 1400. I'm assuming that's UTC. Anyway, continuing on. Tao Zhang, Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, has made a strong argument for the development of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. He asserts that as a new asset class, they hold tremendous promise, notably for the developing world. Wow. Benefits of digital currency emphasized. Zhang's discussed CBDCs in an address given at a conference hosted by the London School of Economics. He pointed to numerous advantages that these currencies can bring to the financial space, particularly by enabling rapid, seamless transfers and providing financial services for the unbanked. Notably, however, was his recognition that a revolution is underway across the global economy and that central banks must innovate in order to avoid being rendered obsolete. Actually, that happened back in 2009 when we figured we can do all this shit without you. But continuing on. Specifically, he asserts that CBDCs have the potential to stem the growing popularity of stablecoins, which he stated, quote, may be difficult to regulate and could pose risks to financial stability and monetary policy transmission. Yeah, you know what? I would wager that it's stablecoins that have been the spur in everybody's ass, and they will continue to be until governments get serious about busting them, because they are effectively counterfeiting US dollars and other fiat currencies. But until people start realizing that, we're going to continue to see a loss on both sides. By the way, there was a printing of $140 million worth of Tether the other day. I think it was yesterday. And you notice Bitcoin took a little bit of a tank, or it's gone up, but it will go down. Because the way that the scam works is this. See, Tether, through iFinex and Bitfinex, they sell their Tether into the exchange as US dollars, and they buy Bitcoin for them. Now, Bitfinex is willing to honor them at a rate of $1 US, or at least the exchange rate that they have listed there. But see, the thing that the exchange can't do is determine whether or not Tether actually has the reserves. iFinex actually has the reserves to back up every USDT that they put out into circulation. And they can't account for it. There's never been a full audit of it. So for all you know, there's the Federal Reserve on the other end of USDT waving that old magic wand, creating up a bunch of units out of nothing, and that Bitfinex is willing to collude with them to sell them Bitcoin for them, because then when they sell those Bitcoin, they sell them at a loss, and they get free US dollars in exchange for them. See, I believe this transfer right here that I'm talking about, it's at least partially contributing to the economic displacement that we're experiencing. They've supposedly issued about, I want to say about $8 billion worth of Tether, and I would be willing to wager that there's much more out there in extended credit. Anyway, continuing on. Zhang was also quick to point out the challenges, blah, 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 mass adoption of these assets. Most notably, the current global financial space is not designed to accommodate borderless digital currencies. No. It's not structured to say no to us. That's what's not structured. The idea that it's not designed to accommodate borderless digital currencies. No, it's not designed to impede transactions in those currencies. That's what it's not designed to, and it'll never be. Continuing on. Thus, one or a select few of strong CBDCs could come to dominate the world. He referred to this possibility as dollarization. I don't. Let's see here. Quote, on the one hand, a CBDC used as an international means of exchange could improve the efficiency of cross-border payments, which are currently costly, slow, and opaque. At the same time, CBDC available across borders could increase the probability of currency substitution, dollarization, in countries with high inflation and volatile exchange rates, and therefore reduce the ability of the central bank to conduct an independent monetary policy. That's fucking stupid. Anyway, one interesting suggestion was the possibility of banks creating fiat-backed digital currencies, which Zhang termed synthetic CBDCs. In other words, butt tokens issued on the back of nothing. Such tokens would enable the banking sector to assume the challenges related to managing these digital assets. For example, enforcing anti-money laundering and know your customer regulations. In other words, no one shall transact without the mark of the beast. The tokens would, however, have the backing of a trusted central bank. Yeah, the central banks that ran us into this financial fucking calamity to begin with. Give me a fucking break. Address underscores blockchains revolutionary appeal. Over the past several months, central banks across the globe have begun aggressively searching for a means to stem the mass adoption of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, i.e., they are competing directly with you, or trying to at least. CBDCs are not an innovation introduced by the central authorities for the altruistic benefit of their users. Rather, central banks now understand that blockchain assets threaten to render them obsolete, and CBDCs are a desperate attempt to introduce viable competition. The true challenge for central banks rests in the fact that the open, borderless, and anonymous nature of cryptocurrencies cannot be replicated by any centrally controlled asset, even if it were digital. In fact, most fiat currency is already used in digital form. The private banking sector has come to realize this fact and is now taking steps to form business models around blockchain technology. Perhaps the best move by central banks will be to acknowledge the challenges ahead and begin legitimizing this new asset class rather than seeking to undermine it. I think that's ultimately what they're going to end up doing, is they're going to end up as custodians. They're already licensed and capable of doing it, but they're going to figure out that that won't mean that they actually have any kind of say over whether or not you retain it. Anyway, but yeah, so I don't believe a CBDC will save anything. If anything, I think that it will be subject to the same issues of fiat currencies because it's issued by the same people that issue fiat currencies and manage fiat currencies. So the idea that the people that are driving us into the big fucking wall that's appearing on the horizon are going to save us by switching it over to another currency unit is fucking silly. I trust a 14-year-old kid deving a coin from Uzbekistan more than I trust one of these fucking central banks, and certainly more than I trust the IMF. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And as far as where to go, man, I've been spanning all over the place. Been covering a lot of really good music, but we have not touched any Pantera. And so here it is, Mouth for War by Pantera, here on Coin Metal. Well, I'm not going to let that one continue. It was actually a little bit off of my drive here. That was Voivod with Obsolete Beings. Anyway, or at least that was one of the songs that I played. I think I've got at least one other article I wanted to get into. And I've said this multiple times on this show that Venezuela will show us the way. They started into this bullshit about 3, maybe 4 years ago when the Bolivar tanked, and we put all kinds of sanctions on them since then. And actually, it started before that. It actually started under, I want to say it started under Bush. It only got worse under Obama. We've been literally trying to replace their president under Trump, and it's all kinds of goofy. Anyway, check this out. It's on decrypt.co. Venezuela shuts down banks amid panic. Bitcoin trading soars. And this is authored on March 17th, 2020 by Jose Lanz. So yes, penis. Despite only having 33 cases of, 33 that is, cases of coronavirus throughout Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro today placed the entire country under quarantine to prevent the spread of the deadly virus. And in compliance with Maduro's decree, the entire national banking system has shut its doors for an indefinite period of time. Meanwhile, Bitcoin trading within Venezuela appears to be on the rise. Antonio Morales Rodriguez, head of the SUDABAN, the highest regulatory body for all banking activity in Venezuela, issued a letter addressed to the nation's banks earlier this week, urging them to close their doors with no clear date of return to normalcy. Quote, I am writing this letter to instruct you that starting Monday, March 16th, 2020, all activities involving direct action to customers, users, and general public through agencies, branches, offices, and administrative headquarters throughout the country will be indefinitely suspended, Rodriguez's letter states. News of the bank closures, however, appears to have been mostly shrugged off by the Venezuelan public. Cash shortages, a dependence on the U.S. dollar, and a wanting technological infrastructure have led Venezuelans to dispense with traditional banking services. For years, an informal economy in Venezuela has thrived, with most people sticking to cash when available. Barter, gold in southern regions of the country, and crypto among the small but growing segment of the population. In fact, Bitcoin trading volume on the peer-to-peer exchange Local Bitcoins is currently experiencing the biggest surge of the year. At the end of February, volume stood at around 491 Bitcoin. By last week, that figure had increased to 540 Bitcoin. That trumps the volume of Bitcoin traded in US dollars on the same platform, which closed the week at 479 Bitcoin. At the same time, throughout Latin America, other countries, with the exception of Brazil, are becoming increasingly cautious with regard to the new coronavirus. Whatever. Countries such as Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Uruguay, and Paraguay have closed their borders, and much of the population within these nations have been forced to stay in their homes under quarantine. And likewise, crypto trading volume in a few of these nations appears to be on the rise. In Colombia, for example, Bitcoin trading volume went from 289 Bitcoin to 403 Bitcoin in just 1 week in the midst of the pandemic, which are figures not seen in the country since mid-2019. In Argentina, traders broke the weekly barrier of 50 Bitcoin, a milestone that has been reached fewer than 10 times in the last 3 years. Meanwhile, in China, the country with the highest volume of peer-to-peer trading, Bitcoin reached a premium of more than 6% in the OTC platforms for the first time earlier this week. It all goes to show that despite the panic, quarantines, and bank closures, Bitcoin stays open. And that will only be true for those of you who are using it on-chain. If you're using it off-chain, this is not necessarily true. At some point in the future, your services provider, your payment services provider, whether it be Blue Wallet or Wasabi or what's that one, Shogun or whatever, I don't know. Anyway, Samurai. Yeah, there you go. Whether it be any of these, will be one of those entities that FinCEN and others may go after and demand compliance with regard to the way that they're treating their cryptocurrency transactions. This is a central point of failure on the regulatory attack surface that was meant to be avoided with the whole concept of Bitcoin. Read your white paper again. Read the Bitcoin white paper. If you haven't already, do it. Please. It's only about 5 pages of text, and even if you don't understand a lot of the math that you're reading, you will understand why it was created and how it was meant to operate. There's no mention of second layer this and fucking Lightning Network that. None of that, or segregated witness. I mean, it says specifically string of witness data. You know, I mean, that's not the exact wording, but point being that it's in there. You should read it if you haven't already. And if you have, you should probably read it again just to do it. I might just do that myself. Anyway, it is with that I'd like to close out this episode. Thank you very much for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because there is absolutely nobody out there to do it for you. And as far as our last dance is concerned, I haven't picked anything out, of course, because I don't. I just don't. But I've been wanting to play some Vola, and I play the shit out of this one song, The Same War, and I want to kind of get away from that. But I'm not sure. Let's try this one. A Stare Without Eyes by Vola, Last Dance, here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and y'all have an excellent weekend. Good night.